Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Drummer Nation, the show for and about drummers, where we talk about drums, drumming, and drummers, and all things related to drums, drumming, and drummers with some of the best in the world, and today is no exception. Let's start with my esteemed co host, the lovely and talented Mr. Adam Nussbaum.
Lovely. Wow. What a compliment. I'm shocked. I have to do my hair.
And giggling in the background is somebody I'm just meeting for the first time. I've been a big fan of his since the early 80s, and it's none other than Mr. Jeff Tain Watts. How are you, Jeff?
Yeah, it's great to be here. I can't top Adam's intro, but nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
I first heard you play when you first came onto the scene, I guess. It was the early 80s. You were with Wynton Marsalis at that place by the Concerts by the Sea, I think it was called. It's out in L.A. And it was terrific, man. You were just a kid. You were in your early 20s, right?
Yeah, I guess I was 22 or 23. Yeah, it's Concerts by the Sea in Redondo Beach.
Right.
I think that's the part of Cali. Yeah, they had just brought me to New York. I went to college with Branford Marsalis at Berkeley College, and then went and got his recording deal, and they recruited me out of school, and I moved to New York and met all these crazy people, and you know, it
Well,
was
the interesting thing about that first album to me is that on one side was Wynton's working band, and the other side was pretty much the old Miles Davis band, right?
yeah, the cats were there too. Yeah, the great Anthony Tillman Williams. Yeah, Tillman Anthony, throw him
Yeah.
down.
So it was that like your first major recording?
I think that's the yeah. I mean, there's some kind of Columbia sampler that like a Christmas recording that I did while I
Hmm.
was in school. Even Wynton's first recording, I was still in Berkeley. I would just kind of take the bus down and do little stuff. But that's pretty much my first formal recording. I think so. Yeah.
Well, the amazing thing was you had to match intensity with Tony Williams.
Yes, which is pretty much impossible. So I just kind of flipped.
No, you held your own very well. Was that in your mind at all, or just went in and played the date?
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna say yeah, but I mean, in general, you prepare as much as you can, and whatever you have in the tank that day, you just kind of just trust yourself. And
I also saw you. I don't know, UCLA, something near there, a theater or something with Wynton. It's funny because I heard you talking about how people got his name wrong when he first came out, and I sat next to a guy who kept going on and on about Winston Marsalis. Winston Marsalis. I didn't
yeah,
have, I didn't have the heart to tell him he had the name wrong. Anyway, it's an honor to
yeah,
meet you. I appreciate you doing my show. And Adam, you guys know each other for a long time, right?
Yeah. I'd say probably when Jeff first got to town. I,
That's
I
what I was
probably
thinking.
heard him in 80, 81 around then or something like that. I
And that's
mean,
kind of right
uh,
after you got to town. When did you get to New York?
me,
Yeah.
75,
Okay.
76.
All right.
And yeah, I remember hearing Wynton's band at the Village Gate, and it was storming. And I was already friends with the incredible, dearly missed Kenny Kirkland, one of our, yeah, yeah, that's right. You
That's
got a
him.
copy of his passport.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
was a great band, though, man.
Oh man, that band had an incredible chemistry, and it was great to hear how you know Jeff and Kenny really were a very potent team, and whoever was playing bass in that band had to be like hold the fort because these cats were really they really had a wonderful synergy,
They did.
and I think anybody that knew Kenny also, he was such a wonderful, sweet person, but he had everything going on, as far as raw natural talent, incredible time, great feel, and big ears. And he was open to all kinds of music. He loved modern classical music. He loved I think his mother was Puerto Rican, his father was black, and he had everything coming together.
Hmm.
And
Well, he did the Sting. He
any
did Sting's tour, right?
well, that was later on,
Yeah.
yeah. But uh, this he was as I like to say, he was a one in a row. And Jeff was lucky that those two had a lot of time together. And man, the hookup was just fantastic to hear. I mean, I had some time playing with Kenny, but not as much as you cats did, and it was always a ball on the bandstand and off.
Let me ask you, Jeff. You guys did a lot of what we might call today metric modulation or multiple, polyrhythms and stuff. Where you're playing quarter note equals quarter note triplet, or it's double time, or it's half time, or any other configuration. Is that something you talked about? Or is it part of an arrangement, or you just floated through those?
Oh, I mean, there's a few different layers to that. I mean, I guess the stuff that I tried to bring to the music of, are extensions of things that existed, I guess. I mean, you have the thing where you kind of play off of maybe off of the dotted quarter note, or you play off of the quarter note triplet or the half note triplet,
Right.
and those things existed in Miles Davis's music and also in Charles Mingus's music, amongst others. So I just tried to expand on that. Not so much with the first band. The first band we pretty much played in time and would modulate a little bit, double time, and based off of the triplet, like things that Miles's quintet had done.
Hmm.
I guess whenever we got to the second group that included Marcus Roberts and Robert Hurst, I started to try to implement more stuff with pure polyrhythm and really superimposing 5 beats over four, 7 beats over four, and resolving in funny places in the bar and stuff like that. And just trying to have kind of improvised time and extend what the cats had done. Yeah.
The cool thing about doing that, to me, what you did is that can get pretty mathematical pretty quickly, and it has to have a musical basis to work, and it always did with you in that band, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I mess around a lot, but I try to have an organic reason for it most of the
Right.
time. And there's usually a purpose for it. It's like if I guess from my background in classical music, you'll have certain pieces where one part of the composition lends itself to a certain tempo, and then another part lends itself to a different tempo. So I was just trying to use polyrhythm to modulate, to create episodes, and without the benefit of having a conductor, just
Right.
just taking.
Well, the one example comes to mind to me was on standards. I think was April in Paris.
Yeah, that's mostly based on the melody,
Right.
just as far as superimposing the triplet. I think that Autumn Leaves, which I arranged on that recording, is a better example of that. You like we're really playing one through seven to, to double time and stuff. A little more complicated, but like I tried to say before, there's an organic reason for it. We were playing a gig in Toronto. There's a venue, like one of those rotating stages, and so we did a sound check and went and inquired about. He said, "Man, see what you can do with Autumn Leaves. Like, see if you can make an arrangement." So I made this arrangement going from 1 through 7, but really, really playing very, very evenly and stuff like that, and made it part of the form. And so it was an excuse to do that, to to use that device. But the main reason why I put the device on there is that from the song. The melody is in 2 bar phrases, and so every 2 bars we add a beat evenly. And I created that arrangement, and it's kind of nerdy, but the organic reason for the arrangement is that whenever autumn does come around, you come out of your house and you notice a leaf or two. and then every day you notice more and more leaves. So it kind of reflects the actual autumn leaves.
So you have a
Yeah,
musical reason and a title reason as well. But the point is, you have a reason to do all that.
it's like an organic reason, not simply
Hmm.
to do it.
Right.
There's so many that you're capable of doing, but I think that you shouldn't do them just because you can.
That's what I was getting at when I said it can get mathematical
Yeah,
if
good.
it's not musical.
That's
Adam, what
cool.
are you thinking?
Well, my feeling is whatever's going on, it's got to flow. I don't want to hear any herky jerky, and
Hmm.
I don't want to have to pull out a slide ruler, and I don't want to get agita when I hear some of this stuff. It's got to flow. It's got to have some kind of groove to it where it just feels right. I mean, when you hear some of the crazy things that happen with time signatures in other countries, it's flowing. And
Right.
that's the whole thing for me. It's like whatever it's doing, I don't want herky jerky, man. I'm always thinking whatever is happening, it's got to flow, and it's got to, at the end of the day, it's about a feeling. And if it feels good, yippee yo ki and if it doesn't, that's another story. And maybe you do want to create some turbulence and some discomfort now and then, because that's all part of this world we live in.
Hmm.
So everything be out of choice, not just consequence.
That's a good way to put
Hopefully.
it. That's a good way to put it. Now, you came up in like high school band program.
To me,
Yeah.
yeah, I came up with a pretty extensive classical background. I came up with school music system. So yeah, so I was doing orchestra for percussion ensemble and eventually jazz band and stuff like that. Yeah. And then after high school I majored in classical percussion at Duquesne University, and I'm a timpanist to this day. Well, actually, behind my head, these are two Grammy certificates for, um, you know, I have two Grammys with the Metropolitan Opera.
I read that. You have 7 Grammys altogether, right?
I think I have a total of nine. There's
Oh
like I
man.
got I got three with Wynton, two with Branford, one with the Mingus Big Band, and one with Harry Connick Jr. I think, and then the two opera Grammys.
Well, congratulations. That's a lot of Grammys.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can play, but I have them definitely.
Well, in your case, it does. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, did
He's
you?
got the caper more than the paper.
Best way to
Yeah.
put it. You're also a composer too, right? You've taken that seriously as well.
Yeah, I got a lot of music. Yeah, I enjoy it.
And talk about drummers as composers.
I think guys are writing a lot of music now. I mean, I think they always have. I mean, Joe Chambers always had a lot of music, and
Hmm.
Mac wrote a lot of music.
Tony wrote some stuff. Yeah.
Sure, Tony had beautiful music. I'm gonna leave a lot of people out, but if you're very inclusive, you can find a lot of guys. The world is a lot smaller, and the information's around, and anybody that desires to write, they just kind of do it, I think.
We have another perspective. And it all depends on, where you're coming from. What was going on with your own musical voyage and experience. I mean, my initial instrument that I studied was I had studied classical piano for 5 years, and the drums was always a initially monkey see, monkey do thing. So I came to the drums for music. I didn't come to music from the drums. And so I have a lot of deficiencies, compared to guys that just spent all their time playing drums. But I think it also affects my way of hearing and the way my perceptions. And I think there's so many. I mean, other people I think of offhand who are wonderful composers. Victor Lewis is a
Yes.
very composer. I mean, fantastic. Paul Motion wrote some
Yeah.
wonderful music. there's cats out there, and
Victor Feldman.
Victor. Well, man, this guy, he played fantastic drums too.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at what he wrote. I mean, we could, just go
Right.
through the,
That's a
mental
lot.
roll. There's so many factors, that are things. We're hearing so many different things, and I think we can bring something else to the table. We all bring whatever our opinion is through our own eyes.
Mm.
We've all grown up being able to hear a lot of the same great musicians out there, and we digest everything, and then it comes out through our reality. So
Now,
it's kind of where it's at.
Jeff, you also have stretched stylistically, not only jazz and classical, but you took the gig with the Tonight Show band for what, 2, 3, 4 years, something like that?
Hey, 3 years, yeah.
3 years. Now, that's a different bag altogether, right? That was back still when the band played for the artists who came on board?
Yeah, yeah. I got to play with the Village People and Elton John and almost every with Donna Summer and a
Hmm.
lot of people, AJ Blige, and I really got into that aspect of it. Just like trying to have the correct feeling and sound, and occasionally using some electronics to say what's recording and stuff like that. It was fun.
It was a commercial gig, though, compared to New York jazz playing, right?
Yeah, yeah, but there's a lot of similarities. That when you like, even when you're playing, you're improvising, but at the same time, some of what Adam's talking about. Like the drummers, we sit in the middle of the band and we're trying to arrange stuff and have like a cool presentation to bring music to people. So I mean, if I whether I'm improvising something really crazy or trying to play something simple, to make a song happen, you're thinking about how to frame something and make it palatable. A lot of the same criteria comes out in my mind. Yeah,
Well, you grew up listening to all that music, too, right?
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I grew up with James Brown and the Meters and Stevie Wonder and Earth,
Hmm.
Wind, Fire and stuff like Purple. Well, whatever. Yeah.
Your
That's all
main
part of our Wonder Bread years.
Hmm.
your
Yeah.
main influences would be who, though? If you had to name two or three, I know Tony would be in there somewhere.
Tony's in there later, but I guess I mean, I used to love Buddy Miles. I was a big '70s fusion guy, so I loved Narada Michael Walden and Lenny White and Billy Cobham and Mike Clark, people like that. I loved how Stevie Wonder plays drums and how Prince plays
Oof.
drums. But then, if you think about, but then I didn't really know anything about like swinging jazz until I got to college. A great piano player, David Budway, he exposed me to Max Roach and John Coltrane's music. So I guess Elvin Jones is in there
Hmm.
and very much in there, and Max Roach. I mean, and of course Tony. I was always like maybe standoffish. I felt like I needed more tradition before I jumped into Tony's thing because his background was so rich. But then while I was in college, I started playing with Wynton, and they really wanted me to kind of draw from that thing. So you know, but I of course I love Tony and Joe Chambers, and then the more I learned about the music, the more it's kind of like you keep one ear to things that are newer, but you're always backtracking, trying to find your place in history, and so I end up going back and discovering people like Papa Joe Jones, like the goat Papa Joe Jones, and
Hmm.
the drum monk, and you know, it's kind of like I kind of have a vibe. When you're studying jazzy music, it's easy to get caught up in bags and vocabulary and stuff like that. It's like maybe that's the way people teach and stuff like that. It's like you can get caught up in I mean, Philly Joe Jones. It's like there's all these licks and things that are associated with him, and but that's very rich. But then whenever I got into Thelonious Monk's drummers, Frankie Dunlop and Ben Riley, um, you know, it felt like less lick oriented and more melodic in a way. You know, I don't know, but it
Hmm.
goes on and on. I'm influenced by by rock and roll and fusion and things like that, and then swinging jazz and then stuff from the church and blues, and more have an influence from African based things, from Afro-Cuban music to African music to folkloric music from everywhere.
That's pretty broad, man. You're covering it all. I was watching the show you did with John DeChristopher. He's a pal. He's been on the show. We've been on his show. Where you said when you were out there doing the Tonight Show, your lives were already perfect, you realize. I mean, that was like a prestigious gig with a lot of attention, a lot of notoriety. You're on TV every night. And you got there, and after a few years, say, hey, man, we already had it perfect. We were playing jazz music that we loved with a great band and recording and touring. And what's wrong with that?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it was. I guess we would have never really thought that gig. Came across Branford's play,
Hmm.
and I feel like he was going to accept it, but something comes in for him. He'll kind of just feel it out and almost act like he doesn't want to do it, or they want me to
Mm.
do this Tonight Show thing, man. I don't want to do that. And then the guys in the band, Kenny Kirkland, Robert Hurst, and all of us, we were kind of like out. So I mean, we did it, and it was more of a question of like why not do it? Music is, we can get some exposure to in general and take the challenge, and um, a lot of our basis and home thing was jazz based, but everybody loves just good music in general. And but once I got there, it's a job, and but there's a good way to do it, and there's a reward in satisfying these different artists and stuff like that. There's something really cool about that. But whenever we really thought about it, our lives were already cool. It's like, I mean, I moved to New York and I'm playing with like some unicorn. I'm playing with Wynton Marsalis, like one of one. I'm playing with Branford Marsalis, one of one. Kenny Kirkland, truly one of one. And also, like Adam can tell you, I mean, Kenny Kirkland was a gas, and there's just certain artists that for a drummer, it just feels so good. And he's one of them. It's like McCoy Tyner's like that, and Kenny Kirkland is very much one of those. It's like having another drummer. He knows what to put with you to make the party happen and make the groove deeper and make the feeling so good. You know, it,
Did
yeah.
you find there was a different vibe to the music business itself out in LA as opposed to New York?
Um, yeah, I think it's gotten a little cooler, but it's definitely more of a music industry town.
Hmm.
So I can appreciate that. There's cats that are very professional and they know how to get stuff done, and know how to use the studio and do things. I think during that time when I was there from 92 to 95, um, it was more of a music industry town. Like there were artistic things going on, but the artsy stuff, you kind of had to look for it. It's kind of like more underground. But one of the great things about it is that Billy Higgins was alive and very
Hmm.
present.
Hmm.
But most of the time you had to kind of look for him. You had to kind of go into the hood and go down to the world stage and go down to where he hung out and stuff like that. But it would be completely worth it because his presence had a great effect on my life. Yeah.
I was there in the '80s, and I know you had to look for it. Shelly Manne was around,
There's great musicians there, and Ray Brown was living there, and Herbie
right?
lives there. There's people there, and I mean, I appreciate it for what it is. I feel like now the artistic community is a little more present, and especially during the pandemic, a lot of cats moved out there from New York, and I think the creative scene is a little more present than when I
Hmm.
lived there.
How did you fare
Yeah.
during the pandemic? What got you through that? Because everybody was in a bad spot for a while there.
Um, just day to day, it helped not living in the city, like living in New York so much. I'm like an hour from the city, and because I would hear from people like it was pretty crazy. You would hear like ambulances all hours of the night, and it was kind of scary. But I was just here with my kids and my wife, and you know, um, I feel like I did a lot of zoomy type of performances and educational things like this for universities, and that kind of got me through. And the musicians that played with me, they were really flexible, and we were able to I was able to keep writing music and do some performing. It just opened up another door. I had a lot more time at home, so I really did get a lot of composing done.
That's a good
Yeah.
way to look at it. Now you teach. You teach still, right?
Yeah, I teach not so much private students. I like to do stuff for like groups of people, like workshops and things like that, as opposed to individual private instruction that I enjoy. And then, like I said, I live on the campus of Lafayette College, which is you know, they don't really have a lot of music majors, but music is important to the school, and they bring in a lot of artists from like Zakir Hussein and Charles Lloyd and Wynton come here with the big band and like almost them Pat Metheny, all these people they come to this venue that's like 2 blocks from my house. But it's really crazy. But yeah, I do the jazz ensemble there, so it's cool. It's a
You
cool
did a
thing.
great job too, man. Fantastic. Because I went to one of the concerts, and Jeff saw where everybody was at, and he was able to optimize things with their level of proficiency. And everyone had a smile on their face, and he was the great ringleader, man. I saw the concert. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah, it's
saw what it was, and you said, all right, let's work with this. And that's what you get. It is what it is, and you did a great job with that.
Yeah, it's a nice challenge because maybe like 7% of them will end up being professional musicians or something like that. But you take what's there, and that's a good general lesson. You know, like the band leaders that I really love and respect and that I've had good relationship. They put you in a position where you can succeed. And so I just tried to look at these people for what they had. It's healthy
Bingo.
for me.
I used to
Yeah.
Yeah.
teach. At one point, I had, I don't know, 40 something students a week, and they were mostly kids. And I thought, if I take my drummer hat off and I look at it that way, like, how many of these kids are going to be professional musicians? Most likely none of them. But if you do it right, how many of them are going to have life enriching experience that they carry with them everywhere forever? All of them. And that made it a lot better for me when you might have 2 hours of teaching kids eighth notes and 16th notes.
Yeah, yeah, I mean the pandemic, it was really crazy, but it makes you come back to like ground zero and think about why you do what you do, and just as far as dealing with people, it's like you have all this there's so many things in music. There's all these you know things that have been codified and rules and things to remember and vocabulary and all this stuff. But at the root of it, you know, I keep coming back to like I really appreciate just like the humanity of music and how
Mhm.
you can how you can use it to heal this crazy world that we're in, right? Especially right now. You know,
Oh,
I mean,
Amen,
yeah,
amen, amen. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, so there's not a dogmatic right and wrong thing anymore, right? Like I know you play match grip and traditional grip for whatever's called for, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's pretty crazy. I play them both. They're both pretty horrible. But like, I guess when I started, I played traditional grip. And that's what I
Hmm.
was taught fourth grade. Whenever I started to take my little lesson in elementary school. Then when I got to junior high school, one of my great teachers, Michael Coomer, he's kind of a drum corps guy and also was sub with the symphony, but just a really open musician that exposed me to a lot of stuff. They changed our drum line to exclusively match grip. So everybody, so that we could play the Malin instruments and timpani, and I feel like match grip kind of had like a big push in the early 70s, early mid 70s and stuff like that. Like everybody was going, hey, let's do it. And even Max Roach from that time on, he played exclusively match grip. So it was kind of like he kind of made it legitimate in a way, just as far as swinging jazz. It's like, well, if Max can do it, then it's, you
That's
know,
right.
if-
You know that Steve Smith had a great video. I forgot Pathways of Motion or something like that, where he talks about. You see, when I get on camera, is the fulcrum open like this? Sorry, or is it closed? Is the wrist up? Is it this way? Is it this way? Is the other hand upside down? And he said, yes, yes. In other words, whatever works for you, baby. It doesn't
yeah,
even. He even talks about, they don't have to be the same. Even if you're playing match grip, they don't have to be. It just has to sound good. It has to work.
it just has to sound good. I think especially for the drum set, if you have a couple different things going on, that's okay. I think that's more for if you're really trying to match your sound on classical snare drum and things like that, then it helps to have some kind of uniformity. But anyway, I played match grip like all through high school and drum corps and things like that. And then whenever I got in college, I was a classical major at Duquesne, and but then I wanted to learn about what the core of jazz was. There's kind of like a way that you can go to school and you can play in like stage band and play stage band music by composers, but not necessarily people from the jazz canon or people you're not really playing Duke Ellington or Count Basie or Woody Herman and stuff like that. You're playing stuff. There's a whole bunch of guys that write specifically for stage band. It's kind of like a sound, but I was performing in these things, but I had no idea about the core of the music. I didn't really know about Charlie Parker, and it was. So anyway, I was trying to seek it out, and my friend David Budway, he said, "Man, you want to know about jazzy jazz or like snake jazz, as they say on Rick and Morty. If you really want to know about that, then, go to Roger Humphreys." And I'm like, "Who's Roger Humphreys?" He's like, "Yeah, Roger
Pittsburgh.
Humphreys."
That's your hometown,
Yeah,
right? Pittsburgh.
yeah. I'm from Pittsburgh, and he's from
he's like
Pittsburgh,
the
and
rabbi, he's the mayor.
That's right.
he he's the king.
And
Well,
think
he'll.
of
He's
Pittsburgh,
the
man. Art Blakey, Kenny Clark, Joe Harris, Errol Garner. Come on. The
it's,
Turrentines, George Benson, Ray Brown. I mean, Mary Lou Williams, bada bing. It keeps on
yep.
going, man.
It
Mr.
keeps on going.
Tain Watts, yeah.
Yeah, Sonny Clark. I mean, especially on piano and Roy Eldridge, and it
Yeah.
goes on forever and ever.
Heavy,
But
heavy.
yes, yeah. I mean,
So Roger
he
helped you
sent
focus that.
yeah. It's just like David was like, man, just look in the phone book, and I just looked in the phone book and called him up. I used to go to his house, and for like $10 lesson and catch the bus out there, and but anyway, this all comes back to the grip thing. I was playing match grip, and he just to get that swag of swinging and stuff like that, he made me kind of include traditional grip again. So I kind of switched back and forth. There's yeah, I feel like at some point, I feel like you can do anything with either grip. It's like there's guys that play backbeat like Steve Jordan and kill it, and they play grip, and then there's
Right.
Max Roach swinging with match grip. So anything works, but yeah,
If you
Pittsburgh,
hearing that sound, you'll figure out a way to get it.
definitely,
Pretty
definitely.
much, there's so many components involved. I remember talking to Freddie Gruber once, and he was saying, the left hand, it's like, when you see somebody playing the violin, there's a lot of ways you can use all these different components, and it's different. Maybe you're using more parts of the chain than you are this way, but whatever works, man. And I think Tony Williams, he once said, well, I want the hands to be different because they're doing different things. The right hand is usually playing the cymbal, the left hand is playing on another surface, another kind of thing. There's so many ways to skin the cat here, man. Whatever, like
Mhm.
you said, whatever works for you to get that sound. If you believe, I heard somebody once said, if you're hearing the sound enough in your head, maybe it was Paul Blay, you'll play the sound you hear if you're hearing it enough. You'll you'll figure it out. you know.
It works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no one way
yeah.
to do it, and there's that gray area. There's no right or wrong. It's like what works for the music and for you to be able to express your ideas as musically as possible.
Yeah, and also you again, yeah, and to reinforce that, you definitely go for the sound, and I feel like in more folkloric music, it's less about like what technique you used, but
Right.
but the message inside of the music. That's what you're trying to convey, like kind of an oral tradition. But this kind of ties this back in with Pittsburgh. For some reason, my first year in New York. Um, Kenny Clark came to New York to make one of his last recordings with Milford Graves and all these cats, and he got stuck at Newark Airport, and so he had the phone number of a lady that I was living with. I guess she was the daughter of one of his colleagues whenever he was teaching at the University of Pittsburgh. So Kenny Clark ended up coming to my house. And he came to my house and we had lunch and stuff like that. And then in the evening, I took him to see Art Blakey at the Village Gate, and the three of us were together. And
Oh,
then
wow.
and us- he came over to my house. We had lunch. He talked about like Fats Navarro and Billie Holiday and all this stuff. He talked about playing the cymbal, and then he talked about like kind of what we're speaking about. He's like, I'll have. He said he would have students, and they would try to pick his brain for like specific stickings and things like that, encouraging people to go for the sound and personalize your technique and stuff like that, and then you end up coming up with something that's more your own and more personal. But
Did you do transcriptions when you were studying?
a little bit, and I need to do more. I need to have more information like under my hands, but more than specific thing, I would kind of just try to figure out how these people are making the music feel the way that it feels, or how people phrase and stuff like that. Less soloistic licks, but I will say that whenever I got to New York, if I if I I was trying to really absorb what Tony Williams was doing, but at the same time backtrack and utilize stuff from Max Roach and Kenny Clark and people like that. So I kind of had a tendency if I learned if I did learn some Max Roach, I would kind of instantly like add notes to it or take notes away from it and kind of personalize it. But I've
Well, what
been
I was getting at is you could transcribe it verbatim and try to play it that way, or you can look at what the guy did and put your own stuff around it or in it and through it and use it as a
yeah.
launching pad.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of noticed that as a thing with Tony Williams. Like you'd hear that the kick drum sounds like Art Blakey, and some of the stuff he plays on the tom toms, it might be Max Roach, but it might have an extra note in the kick drum or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. It might
Mm-hmm.
end up being like a 7 beat phrase instead of a 4 or 3 beat phrase, and whatever, But
Well, I don't talk about gear much, but what are those sticks you had in your hand? Is that your drum set stick?
oh no, these are just like some big Vic Firth.
That's what yeah, that's what I thought. I can't see you playing in a trio with that stick.
Yeah, I mean somebody could, but I mean, and if you had to, you could. It's
Of
all about
course,
balance.
right.
Yeah, I just it's kind of a medicine ball thing.
Uh,
Just
and what's that
practicing.
symbol behind you? Is there a symbol behind
What
you?
there's
Yeah, yeah. What's
there's
that?
actually a gong. That's like a big
Oh, I see. I
Sabian.
see it now.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah. You can see it.
Special to you, or just a good place to put it?
Oh, good place to put it. You see it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, good place for it. Yeah, I get to perform on it once in a while. Yeah, it's cool.
It looks like a wind gong. I couldn't really see it. But Adam, what you thinking?
Well, I was trying to look on my wall to find if I had the CD or I think I have the record of that thing that Jeff was talking about when Kluk came into town, and he did that recording called Pieces of Time. And it
Yes.
was with Milford Graves, who's one of, along with Andrew Cyril, Kluk, and I'm blanking on who the fourth person was.
Yeah, me too.
But I know I have that. And I did see them perform in Brooklyn, and Kluk wasn't there. It was Philly Joe.
Okay.
And it was just fascinating to see these gentlemen coming from, different generations, finding kumbaya and making some great music. You know, wow. Yeah, I would. If yeah, I but that came out I think on the Black Saint or the Soul Note label called
Yeah, it sounds.
Pieces of Time. And
Hmm.
yeah, I remember it was just fascinating because it was like you had the father and the sons, and it was just beautiful how everyone was connected and relating. So it was pretty groovy.
Here's an interesting thought I had. Everybody talks about some of the original rock cats, like John Bonham, for example. We all learned some things from John Bonham. You rarely hear jazz players talking about how John Bonham might have influenced the jazz world? Do you think that goes both ways?
Why? I mean, why not? I mean, what he used to kind of quote Max Roach, right? He used to play. Did he play the drum also waltzes and stuff like
I
that?
think he
He
quoted it. Yeah.
he quoted it. I don't know. I mean, the instrument is still so young. So there's going to be commonalities. There's going to be cats checking each other out.
Hmm.
Be less of a hang up with genre and stuff like that. Because the instrument's so young. Everybody's just trying to make sense out of this thing.
I mean, good time is good time. If it's got a good feel and a good vibe, I mean, yippee ki yay. If it feels good, amen. And there was a lot of mix of things going on. I mean, you think of like the bands like the Stones and things like that. They were affected by a lot of the American blues cats that
Yeah.
then, the Stones came and woke people up to the people in America to what was inherently here. I mean, I
Hmm.
know my own personal thing. I heard Mitch Mitchell before I heard Elvin Jones.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I heard the cart before the horse. but then that woke
Definitely.
me up to that. So it's all out there. I mean, if a cat's got a great beat and he's got big enough ears and he's got the opportunities, hopefully he can play what the music tells him to play.
What is
But
here?
saying it and doing it are two different things. You can say
I
you
hear
want
you.
to do something, but you got to put the time in.
What
You
does it
can't
mean when
Google it.
What does it mean when somebody says such and such a drummer has a big beat?
Oh, I don't know. Does that mean like a wide beat or just really comfortable, I think.
I found that recording that I was talking about with Kluk, Surreal, Milford Graves, and Famadou Don Moyer.
That was
That's
really
Ah,
the
good.
one. Don Moyer, what more can we say? Yeah, man, from the Art Ensemble of Chicago.
that's a,
I saw that
Yeah.
band several
So
times. I used to
this
love
is
that band.
this is an incredible thing. It's almost the other thing I could compare it to a little bit was in Boom
Right.
that Max Roach had. So but this is fascinating because this is a cross generational project, and it was Andrew Surreal is still with us. So is Don Moyer, and if you want to check out something really interesting, there's a movie about Milford Graves, I think called
oh,
something Mantis or something. What's the name of it, Jeff?
yeah, some kind of mantis. Yeah, it's a beautiful film. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jeff's
this
got
guy,
somebody
he was
waiting in the
like a.
car for him, Adam.
Yeah. All right, we'll let you go, man. Jeff,
Thank you, brother.
good to see you, man. Thank you.
Honored you would do the show. Happy to meet you.
Yeah, and if you guys ever want to circle back around and do another one, we can do another one, and I'll have more time. And
I'll
you
I'll
know,
hold
We
you to
know where
that.
to find you.
yeah, for sure, no
All
problem. It's
right.
cool. It's very
Thank you, gentlemen.